We're just looking at some of the tributes here. Mostly the children have left. There's some from parents and members of staff as well. And what's impressed us over the last couple of hours on this extraordinary morning for the people here of Corpus Christi College is how involved a lot of the communities are here with this school. People telling us that they themselves, people in their 40s telling them they themselves were students here and remember Anne Maguire as being an inspirational teacher. And then, of course, there's the body of 11 to 16-year-olds now who, of course, are now considering. Some of them who were taught by her, some of them who weren't, but they're all aware now that something's gone badly wrong in this small education community. A member of the community has taken a knife and stabbed another member of that community. That's an extremely hard thing for people to digest. And looking at some of the messages here written in the handwriting of the children, Mrs. Maguire, gone but never forgotten. You inspired countless generations. You taught 4 generations of our family, and you were simply a totally fantastic teacher, always caring and always there to make us smile, even if you were speaking Spanish. Happy memories of Spanish lessons with you. Part of Corpus Christi goes with you. And that's the flavour of everything we're seeing now, written in the handwriting of the children. To miss, and then it doesn't have her name there. Descanse en paz. Rest in peace. Someone's gone for a bit of Spanish there, because clearly someone who was taught by her. You were a great teacher who had a positive impact on all of our lives in some way or another. And that comment reminds us, of course, that many people have said that because Anne Maguire was at the school for 40 years, because she made it a lifetime's work to teach here at Corpus Christi, she had that venerable status. Not the head teacher, she was head of year for a long time, but had given that up as she went part-time, as she approached retirement age. But she was a significant figure, totally relaxed and experienced in terms of how she related to the children. The kids picked up on that. The ones we've spoken to here said straight away they could see that she was someone who was comfortable with the lessons, comfortable with the student body, and many of them said they found her inspiring. A young chap we spoke to earlier on called Tom, who said that he didn't really enjoy Spanish, but after a few lessons with Anne Maguire, that changed. 9:30 this morning at the church, just here, the Corpus Christi Church attached to the school, there's going to be a service of remembrance taken by the Monsignors attached to Hub is there. It's not far away, but Gerard's got his position outside the gates of the church there. Gerard, this is going to be an important service for everyone in this community, the staff, the pupils, parents, families, and people from nearby alike.
Well, I think this school, the connection that this school has to the church, being a Catholic college, of course, means that the pastoral care that this school is able to offer to its pupils is probably greater than many schools will have. The church here has its normal morning mass. I understand that prayers will be said for Anne Maguire there. Afterwards, I understand that candles will be lit in her memory, and there will be later, I'm sure, a dedicated service for Anne Maguire, as you say. Parents will want to come because so many of the parents have been pupils of Anne Maguire's. We've been talking to them this morning, generations of the same family, all of whom remember her. And it's really interesting that all of them remember her as that same kind of constant presence. I was talking to one mother who had been at school in the 1980s, and she spoke as fondly as her daughter did of Anne Maguire, and how she was that constant, reassuring, friendly presence in school. So parents will want to come, current pupils, obviously, and the wider community as well. We were hearing from Leeds City Council that the shock felt within the Education Authority because, again, so many of the people working for Leeds City Council know Anne Maguire as a teacher, not only as someone who works within the Education Authority, but as a teacher of them. So there will be a lot of people when that service is organised to remember her life. There will be many, many people there.
Indeed, Gerard, thanks very much indeed. Gerard Tubb there. As I was talking to Gerard there, I just spotted this card here. Thanks for all the knowledge I have gained. Thanks for the Spanish. Thanks for the good times. And in capital letters, I am sorry. That's just one another pupil there summing up her feelings. Of course, this is a murder investigation. The police are questioning, as we said, a 15-year-old pupil from the school, but that's a matter of process. Martin Brunt, our crime correspondent here also. Martin, tell us a bit about that process and what we know so far and what we can say about this young boy.
for all the expressions of grief and shock, police keep reminding us that there is a murder investigation that they have to pursue. In many respects, it's a straightforward, not simple, but straightforward investigation. They're not looking for any other suspect. They have their 15-year-old boy, a pupil at the school, in custody, and questioning of him will continue. I'm told that there's been a good deal of psychological assessment. That's one of the first processes that will be gone through. And it may be that they haven't formally started questioning him yet. They're expected to do that today, and probably for a good part of the day. But there are lots of other things they'll need to do. And of course, they will be on site at the school. They need to explore forensically the murder scene, which I'm told is contained basically within the classroom where Mrs. Maguire was attacked. There are a number of witnesses that they'll want to talk to. We think perhaps as many as 30 kids were in the class.
And how are they going to do that? Because they're young children.
Very gently. They can't just sit down with them one at a time and just start the questioning in those simple terms. They will have to be talked to with people with them. There'll be advisors with them. They'll have psychologists advising them how best to approach these kids, because many of them, perhaps all of them, will still be very traumatized. So it's not going to be easy to get out of them the details that they need to get. But apart from talking to the witnesses themselves, the police will want to establish the relationship between the suspect and the victim. And that will, of course, involve talking to teachers as well, who, of course, will be equally traumatized. So although it's a straightforward investigation, they're not looking for anybody else, there is this very delicate process that will need to be gone through as much as they can before they have to get to a situation where they must decide whether or not to charge their suspect. I don't think that's something that will happen today, but perhaps tomorrow. OK,
Martin, thanks very much indeed. Martin Brunt there, our crime correspondent. And of course, all this plays into the bigger picture. The Prime Minister was quick to comment yesterday, not because he wants to necessarily start drawing any conclusions or making any big points, but he knows that for the first time in British history, a teacher has been murdered in the classroom, and that is a point from which there is no going back. The issue of crime in schools, the issue of violence in schools, particularly between pupils and teachers, has become something of a political issue here in the UK, and also something of great concern to parents as they look around to where they want their children to be educated. Only last week, Sky News was looking in detail at this issue of weapons being brought into schools. Our social affairs editor, Afua Hirsch, standing by now. Afua, we talked yesterday, didn't we, about this issue of weapons in schools. This is something that's going to play very strongly now as we take stock of what happened here and look ahead as to how people can think about not necessarily stopping it happening again, but certainly reassuring people that their children are safe in school.
Well, absolutely. This tragic event has really reopened the debate about security in schools and the question of whether pupils are coming to school armed. And we last saw a teacher stabbed in school, as you said, 20 years ago with the death of head teacher Philip Lawrence. But since then, we've discovered that things have not necessarily become safer. We did a Freedom of Information Act request to all the UK's police forces, and what we got back was really quite a terrifying array of weapons that have been found on pupils in schools in the last 3 years. Now, those weapons range from guns to knives, an axe, a meat cleaver, a wooden pole with nails studded into it, cutthroat razor, dangerous objects clearly capable of causing lethal injury. Now, people who work in schools with young people who carry weapons say they have been warning for years now of this danger. They feel they haven't been listened to. They are saying that children are arming themselves for various reasons, partly in some cases because they themselves don't feel safe, in other cases because they want to conduct violent attacks. And this is something that teachers have also told us that they have been complaining about. They don't feel safe. So I think questions will really be asked now about what is being done in schools. Obviously, schools should be safe places of learning. Nobody's suggesting that schools should become fortresses with metal detectors everywhere. But on the other hand, there was a point in time around 5 years ago when knife archers and airport-style metal detectors were being installed in schools. From what we've learned, that seems to have trailed off few schools have that kind of equipment anymore. And I think the obvious question now will be whether that should be looked at again and whether that might be needed. Because what the people who work in schools where weapons have been found are saying is that it's a question of time before something like this happened. And now it seems that tragically their prediction has come true.
Indeed, Afua, thanks very much indeed. Afua Hirsch there, our social affairs editor. It's going to be a long day for the kids here. They'll be much transformed by the time they get picked up early in the afternoon. A lot of the children, we were told by parents and grandparents, were reluctant to come in today. They reacted, of course, badly to what happened yesterday, went to their rooms, didn't want to be consoled, didn't want to talk about it necessarily, and certainly were reluctant to come back in because they were starting to see Corpus Christi as a negative place. That is now the job of the teachers and parents as well, to reinforce the message to their kids that just because bad things happen, it doesn't mean that the whole platform of their education has been spoilt. But given the horror of what happened yesterday, that's going to be a mighty hard task for a lot of the teachers and families here in this small community. 1:30, I'm going to be speaking to an anti-knife campaigner, Anne Oakes-Odger, whose son was killed in 2005 in a knife attack in a school. That'll be coming up shortly. Also, remember, you can keep track of all our reports. There's a picture gallery building now on Sky News for iPad, and that, of course, is free to Sky TV subscribers. Back to you now in London.
Andrew, thanks very much. I know you're going to be there throughout the day, but for now, thank you. In other news, half of all new cancer patients
have all gone back into school today, and what a day it's going to be for them as they gather under the guidance of their teachers and no doubt counsellors as well to take in what happened yesterday when experienced and old-hand teacher Anne Maguire was brutally stabbed in a classroom with up to 30 children there as witnesses to what took place. Also happening now, just a couple of hundred metres away at the Corpus Christi Catholic Church here, not far from where we're standing, a service has now started. Various monsignors attached to the school, including Monsignor John Wilson that we spoke to earlier on this morning on Sky News, beginning one of probably many church services of remembrance as people take in what's happened. Remember Anne Maguire, how significant she was to the school as teacher of some 40 years service, 61 years old, and starting to scale down her duties as she approached retirement. The church is very busy. It's very filled with people who've been gathered from the community. And remember also that the people we've spoken to, what we've learned here is that there is a great attachment down the generations with Corpus Christi. Many of the people dropping off children here at the school gates would talk to us and tell us how they were once pupils here, pupils of Anne Maguire's. They remember her as their teacher, people in their 40s, people in their 30s, people who have relations who teach at the school, who help out at the school. So many contacts, so many avenues of connection to this school and to this woman. This woman celebrated as being the mother of Corpus Christi. She was a head of year for a large number of her time here. She wasn't the head teacher, but she was a significant matriarchal figure to the students here who, as soon as they arrived, instantly recognized her as someone who was comfortable, part of the woodwork of this college. Anne Maguire teaching religious education and teaching Spanish, and a lot of the floral tributes we've seen here scrawled in the writing of 11 and 12-year-olds have a few stumbling phrases in Spanish that they've written down on their cards as well to remember what Anne Maguire did for them, did for their parents, and did indeed for their grandparents as well. A woman who's being celebrated today after she was stabbed brutally yesterday. And remember also a 15-year-old is now being questioned by police in connection with that stabbing. We've gathered a lot of pictures over the last 18 hours or so, and we've spoken to a lot of people. We put them together for you. These are the voices and images that we've gathered so far on this extraordinary and terrible tale.
She was always approachable. You could always go to her, you could always speak to her. And she deserves every ounce of respect that can ever be given to her. She really does. She was that lady.
She had time for every single person. It didn't matter what you've done the day before, why you were going back after school. She was just there. She would get you through.
With Anne, it wasn't just a job. She was just one of those people who took the job and made it a life's ambition. She felt for every child, and she wanted every child to do what they could do, and she got them there.
She was so lovely. She were always bubbly, like if you were happy, she were happy. She'd do anything.
She's a really, really nice teacher. She's never meant anything wrong to anyone. She's a brilliant teacher. She had a heart of gold. She was lovely to everyone.
She was really supportive and always kept people's head above water, even if they weren't doing too well. Really supported them.
Hope for ourselves.
Well, let's take you to some live pictures now. Here you can see there's the church service taking place a couple hundred meters away from us, where people have gathered to remember Anne Maguire, a woman of 40 years service to Corpus Christi College. That's a service that's being presided over by Monsignors from the school as well as from the church itself. Just reminding us of the connections between the school and the church and, of course, Corpus Christi College and the Catholic faith, something that has led to a lot of parents keeping their children here at this school. Even when they moved away, we spoke to a woman, Anita, and her son, Tom, earlier on today. They moved to Wakefield, but Tom insisted that he wanted to stay at Corpus Christi. The parents allowed that, and they drive him in every day from Wakefield to come to school here. It's very hard for us to actually make it clear to people who aren't here on the ground just what an extraordinary event it is for children when inside their own school a member of their community is stabbed repeatedly to death within that community, and more than likely it's going to be confirmed by the police that that was by another member of that community. That rocks the foundations of what school is supposed to be. Something we've been looking at Sky News for quite some time now, this issue of weapons in schools, the increasing reports of violence, how the numbers differ across the country, that it's not all grim, but certainly there is an issue, a problem to be dealt with in the education system in terms of weapons coming into schools and what that means to the safety of teachers as well as other students. Our social affairs editor, Afua Hirsch, has this report.
Just last week, Sky exposed the range of potentially lethal weapons children are bringing into schools. We asked UK police forces how many children had been found carrying them. 981 pupils have been caught with weapons in schools in the last 3 years. Of those, 80 were primary school children. The youngest was an 8-year-old with a knife in Scotland. 329 pupils have been charged with weapons offences in schools since 2011.
This is a profoundly shocking, indeed absolutely appalling incident. All our thoughts are with the teacher's family, with the school, with all the pupils who study there. We have to wait for the investigation to see what exactly happened and what lessons can be learned.
This latest tragedy has brought back memories of Philip Lawrence, the head teacher stabbed to death by a teenager outside this North London school almost 2 decades ago. But the question is, are teachers safer now? Or have things got worse? Our investigation into weapons in schools found a terrifying array of objects, ranging from guns and knives to a cutthroat razor and a meat cleaver. And some believe our figures are just the tip of the iceberg.
Teachers we speak to on our helpline at Teacher Support Network tell us that there's a very real threat of violence in schools. So 49% of the teachers we surveyed said that they'd been assaulted or threatened with assault.
Police have said the latest killing is an isolated incident and appealed for calm. But for those who've been warning of the danger to children and adults in schools, it's one tragedy too many. Afua Hirsch, Sky News.
Afua Hirsch there reporting on this issue of weapons in schools, something that's in the back of many parents' minds as they make their decisions about where they want to send their children to be educated and how they want them to be educated. Let's speak to one of our guests now this morning. Anne Oakes-Odger is an anti-knife crime campaigner. She's the co-founder of knifecrimes.org. Anne, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Now, you suffered a terrible tragedy with your own son being killed with a knife in 2005. Hearing about this event yesterday must have really brought a lot of this home to you again.
Yes, it's certainly, speaking with you today, it's with a very heavy heart for what Anne Maguire's family will be feeling, and also the pupils that have witnessed such a terrible scene. And it comes in less than a week after I was speaking with Sky after the report only last week. I certainly feel that we need to take a measured look now at how we deal with the whole issue of violence in general, and how we can perhaps take a look at the effects on young people in their developing psychological years when they are subjected to hours perhaps in front of violent video games. We know that soldiers are trained to deal with war through those types of training programs. So it isn't beyond the realms of possibility that the psychological effects are harming young people. Certainly we should be looking at, I feel, something on the school curriculum that deals with the consequences of crime, what that means to young people, drug and alcohol abuse, how that affects young people. We are living in a changing society where schools need security, and certainly from the campaign that I started following the tragic murder of my son, it became very evident that the two people responsible had progressively gone through their teens and 20s and 30s, becoming more and more involved in violence. So I think to have a measure...
Can I ask you something?
Yes.
Can I ask you... People watching this will be terribly alarmed about the prospects of weapons in our schools. We've done our research. We've produced a list. We've been given lists of the different weapons that have been picked up over the last few years in British schools. Probably you can see those on your screen now. But Anne, tell me, how widespread is this? I mean, does this mean that our schools are infested with weapons, or simply that it's a growing problem in parts of our education system?
I think it's a growing problem in parts of our system, but what I do feel is that it is time for parents to become involved in how we prevent youngsters from feeling so fearful when they go to school that they feel that they should carry a weapon. And I do feel that teachers, whilst we have brought into place following two select committees on the subject of knife crime, the fact that teachers can search pupils, teachers don't really want to have to do that. So I think we need to take a measured look, understand that young people, many, many, many young people are excellent students and are not violent, but there are influences there outside of school, such as drug and alcohol abuse and violence that they are subjected to. We need to look at how we prepare young people for those life stresses, how we get them to understand the consequences of their job prospects through crime. It's not just knife crime per se, it's a whole raft of influences that result in young people feeling that they need to carry a weapon, and we need to look at that. It's no good, I feel, to just say this is an isolated incident, which it is, and it's very dreadful, but we have seen not just Philip Lawrence, who was tragically killed at school gates. We had the young pupil, Luke Walmsley, killed in the school environment. So we must take a measured look, I think, and try and learn some lessons as to how we prevent this kind of thing happening within our schools and in our communities. Let's get parents on board.
Anne Oakes-Hodger, thanks very much indeed for talking to us. And of course there's an awareness across the country, as well as there is now here at Corpus Christi, that it's not just schools that are the contained sources, of course, of weapons. It's something that's bleeding in from the streets, and a holistic approach is what campaigners will be calling for. Look at the streets, look at the families, look at the world outside, as well as what's coming into our schools. Because the last thing the parents and teachers here at Corpus Christi and anywhere across the country want to see is all their children being frisked every day as they come into school, because that's the only way they feel they can deal with the problem or the threat or the perceived threat of weapons-aided violence within our schools. Plenty more on this, of course, throughout the day with the backdrop of the stricken college behind us here in Leeds. Back to you now.
Andrew, appreciate it. Well, you've been watching Sky News. Do stay with us because coming up we'll have